Sorry about that, my son came in there. So it says, Dear Delith and Vanessa, please watch this video link which shows a discussion between myself and a stallholder at Chester Pride 2024. Please advise if anything said by the stallholder within this conversation breaches any of Cheshire West and Chester Council's policies. And I've sent the link and I've said please confirm by return email. Now I haven't heard anything back from them yet, but that is my I want it on record that they have, I want some confirmation that they have actually viewed this material. And then if we have any procedural failings in place after they've seen it, and if they're not willing to treat it as a safeguarding concern, then that is something that needs to be taken a step further formally. And I have been researching what is the best route and the most viable route in terms of holding them properly to account for failures, because we can't let child safeguarding failures just go on and on and on. Part of the problem has been when I've raised issues in the past, either I've been ignored and not had any replies, or I've asked the police to look at stuff that I'm concerned about that they've been stood right next to and they've refused to look at it. Or I've been advised, well, if there's a particular child that you're concerned about, you need to report that to the Child Safeguarding Board. Now, the first time this happened and there was striptease around kids and sale of really extreme hardcore adult sex toys around children at Chester Pride, and I reported that to the leader and chief exec and so on, the advice was go to the Safeguarding Board. I didn't have an individual child's name because there were, you know, possibly tens or hundreds of kids in and out of that tent throughout the day, that called the glitter tent, where that stuff happened. So it's not like a normal safeguarding concern where you have a defined child and set of incidents around that child. It's actually any number of children and its potential harm in the future. But that's still potentially significant harm. It's still potentially classed as that legally. So when I did report that, I didn't even get any responses. I don't know whether they ever followed it up, but they certainly didn't tell me if they had done. And I couldn't get any sense out of any of the officers, including the senior officers within the council, as to what they had done with that concern, that report that I'd made. The feeling that I have is that they're so ideologically captured within the council, within the police, that they just don't regard this as being a concern. And so it's for councillors, whenever they come across things like this, to actually make sure that we say, well, hang on, in old money, just a few years ago, that really would have been a safeguarding red flag. And could it be a matter of policy capture that is the reason behind we're not taking this seriously, and we need to look at that again. So that's what I'm doing. We've got a new in-post. Let me just see what else did I say. All right, so I also wrote to Amanda Perriton. Amanda Perriton is new in. She's the new Chief Executive Officer for Children and Young People. So she has, in terms of legal accountability, she's probably the front runner. She's got more of a responsibility legally in terms of how the council conducts itself on safeguarding than the leader of the council or the chief exec or any other officer or councillor. So it was important to actually put her in the picture because she's new and she hasn't seen some of the stuff necessarily that's happened previously. And until I've sent her this link of what was happening with Steph Holmes in the trans tent with Chrysalis, she wouldn't necessarily be aware of it, even though it is in the public domain and I have raised it at full council meetings, etc. several times, to no avail. So I said, Dear Amanda, I write to you in your new role as Executive Director of Children and Young People's Services to highlight some concerns I have raised in relation to child safeguarding failures at Chester Pride, an event Cheshire West and Chester Council licenses and to which promotion and funding support is provided. Please see the email attached and view the video clip. Please advise as to whether anything said within the video clip by the stallholder breaches any of Cheshire West and Chester Council's policies. So this is really important because I also submitted a Freedom of Information request about our liability, the Cheshire West and Chester Council's liability in some of these failures. And I got fudged responses back really quite quickly. I was surprised how quickly they came back, but they were fudged responses. So they'd kind of made a decision on this one that they weren't going to share any information and they weren't going to play ball. The good thing about that is that you can kind of appeal it. You can request that they do an internal review of those questions and answers. And when you do that, you can sharpen the questions that you're asking, so you can actually really focus them on what it is that they've failed to provide you with, to make sure that you get that information. And then if they fail, then it can go to the IOC, who regulates freedom of information compliance. So, and I have done that before. I actually asked about the sort of LGBTQ queer type culture and how that has embedded itself within policies concerning our looked after children, because I don't know who's looking out for those kids in terms of policy capture and the impacts on their lives. So I asked quite a lot of questions, and I had to go through those hoops before I actually got some meaningful answers. Having got those meaningful answers, the next step is you need support to take legal action, or to you're going to need willingness at government level in order to do a review in terms of the corporate structure. That's going to be difficult to get at the minute with the government that we've got in place, I would imagine. So that means that then you're having to think about legal routes, which isn't ideal, but that's where we're at. So I've gathered that evidence as far as I can, and now I'm trying to make sure that I've got some good evidence around what's been going wrong in Pride. And some of the fudged responses that I got from the council were along the lines of, well, it's the charity. They want to pass the buck onto Chester Pride, the registered charity. But although the Chester Pride is a registered charity and they are in the forefront of any legal, consequences that might come from those kinds of failures, they're more vulnerable. And they do have this legal responsibility as a registered charity. At the same time, they're licensed by Cheshire West. It was on Cheshire West land. Cheshire West has provided substantial amounts of funding to Chester Pride, and legally that means that they're in the frame as well. Cheshire West and Chester Council don't escape this. So that's those emails. So everybody there, no one there now in the top of the tree at Cheshire West and Chester Council can now say that they have not had sight of this video, or they weren't aware of what's happened, or that they haven't been contacted with by a councillor who has concerns. So I also wrote to our Democratic Services lead, dear Penny, on your return to the office, I would be grateful if you could provide me with the names and professional roles of each of the members of the Safety Advisory Group that oversees public safety, including child safeguarding at events that we licence, or events that concerns have been flagged with Cheshire West and Chester officers or councillors about. If there have been any changes to membership of this group, please advise as to who replaced who and when that change took place. If you could confirm who chairs the group and whether that has been the same person over the past 3 years, I would be grateful. In answer to question 49 presented at full council on 17th of October 2024, the respondent, Councillor Louise Gittins, that's the leader of our council, she's also the chair of the Local Government Association, promised to ensure the group's terms of reference, agendas and minutes would be sent around to members following that meeting. However, this hasn't happened as far as I'm aware. Could you please liaise with officers to resolve this and provide those records to cover the period 22nd of August 2022 up to today's date? Thank you for your assistance with this, and I hope you enjoyed a lovely break. So Penny's really great, and she's got back in touch to say that she is on it, and she's going to try and get hold of that information for us. Because this is why quite often what happens is that as a councillor you can ask written formal questions and you can submit them through full council, and they go in the minutes and they go in the public records, so there's public accountability, and anyone who is watching is aware that there's concerns being raised, and they might be looking out for what the answer to those concerns might be. With this, I was promised some paperwork for a group that it took me really months of asking questions about to even establish there was such a group that oversees public events, with it, that the council's either in charge of or a member of. We run the group, but it's a multi-sectoral group, so there's police there, and there's fire service, and anyone who might have anything to do with any kind of safety issue, public safety at events. And it took a lot of questioning to find out about this group, its existence, what its role is, to get it established that yes, it does cover child safeguarding as well. Whether it's met, turns out it hasn't. So I've made multiple submissions expressing my concerns about what's been happening at Chester Pride events locally in child safeguarding terms. None of them have been taken to that group as far as I can tell. They haven't met, the answer came back that they didn't feel there was any need for them to meet. They haven't kept any minutes because they haven't had a proper meeting. So I don't even know if that group have been informed that I have contacted the leader of the council or the safeguarding lead within the council or the chief exec or any of these other people that I've been desperately trying to get to take these issues and concerns seriously. If that chair wasn't aware, then that's not their fault. If they were aware and that group hasn't done its job, then obviously that's something we need to know. And as a councillor, it's my job to be on the ball and ask these kinds of questions. But obviously it doesn't go down well always, and it sometimes can take a lot of persistence to actually get the information you've asked for. But Penny's on the case and Penny's going to try and get me that information. So we want to know the terms of reference, I want to know the membership, I want to know who's in the group, has there been any changes, and I've got more questions about that I want to ask, but we're going to start with those. So before I move on, just to say again, if you're a local councillor and you want any, I don't know, like just, what would you call it, like comradeship, or to just knock ideas back and forth of the best ways to tackle some of these things. It's a kind of trial and error process, and in very hostile territory, so it's good for people to have support networks. You're often very isolated. Most of your colleagues are going to be too afraid to speak up. We have built up like a lot more support locally. I've got one or two people who are, well, one person who's very supportive, and then other people that will vote in favour and help me out with various different things, which I'm really grateful for. But it's tough, you know, it's difficult, and it's been a really tough journey. So if there's anybody who wants to discuss where they're at as a councillor within their own council, then please, by all means, get in touch with me. I'm at Mandy Clare Turf on X, so MandyClare, and then capital TERF on the end. And I've also got this women's work, so we've got a X account for that as well, where you can comment under the video, and we can have some dialogue. And I'm working with other people, so I work with Sally James, who's also part of women's work with me, and she's on a covert op at the minute. I can't tell you what it is she's doing, but it's something that's really quite valuable to our work. And then I also work with other local parents and other residents that get in touch with me with similar concerns. And we're kind of starting to build up quite a good, effective network, not just for turning up outside of events that the council sponsors and supports that we don't like and we think are wrong, but also in lots of other ways as well. So I hope that is helpful. And I'll do a separate video about the freedom of information requests, so that people have got an idea of the kinds of questions and how I'm phrasing them, and some of the results that we're getting with those too. Okay, cheers, speak soon, bye bye.